Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for the intro. I'm from Concordia AI. We're focusing on AI safety and governance, especially based in China, based in Beijing, and interacting with domestic stakeholders. And today I'm going to give a talk on like evaluation-based risk assessment of frontier models. But a little bit about me. I had a technical background in the past. I did some ML research. My first research was about developing a benchmark for some neural architecture search algorithm, and then I pivoted to AI safety later, and focused on robustness and thinking about potential harms from increasing agentic systems. Right now, I'm working at Concordia AI, in this talk, many of the there could be opinions and there could be mistakes, but my own doesn't necessarily represent our organizational views. And so throughout this talk, I'm trying to ask 3 questions. But before that, I want to highlight the 3 subjects that I'm talking about, which is evaluation, risk assessment, and also frontier models. And the 3 questions I'm asking is what kind of risks could our frontier models present? The second question is in what ways could we assess those risks via model evaluation? And this part is particularly connected to benchmarking. And the third question is how could model evaluation help with AI governance? And first of all, starting from AI risk, because that's one of the subjects. So we have seen discussion regarding catastrophic risk from AI has become mainstream. On the left, there was the statement of AI risk, where in the last year, where AI scientists and public figures expressed their concerns about AI risk. And on the right is the consensus paper that tries to examine the type of large-scale social harms and malicious uses, and as well as more speculative loss of control over AI systems. And it's worth noting that the impact from AI risk kind of transcends national borders, and we kind of need some global coordination on this. And on the left is a digital dialogue happened before the UK Summit last year, and where scientists and mostly scientists and civil societies from various countries gathered together to have this dialogue, try to strike some scientific consensus on risks. And on the right, you see at the UK Summit last year, there were multiple countries, leaders from multiple countries signed the Bletchley Declaration, asking for more international cooperation. But and throughout this talk, I'm going to mostly talking about frontier models, and I'm particularly referring to 2 types of models, referring to the AI Safety Summit scope. The first one is on the left, the type of narrow AIs with dangerous capabilities, especially for AI models with, for example, AI models with the capability to help assist bioengineering. And on the right, I'm mostly referring to the frontier AI models, such as for example, large language models and potentially AGIs. And specifically for frontier large models, I'm mostly referring to the type of models that are highly general purpose, that can perform a wide variety of tasks. And I'm specifically focusing on talking about capabilities, the extent, how well a model could accomplish certain tasks that we specify. And I'm taking a step back from the definition of intelligence, which could be hard to define. And I'm not really talking about, I didn't also add consciousness or sentience in my discussion throughout this talk. So I want to highlight the 2 properties of the large models. The first one is scaling laws. So basically, researchers have found so-called scaling laws, which can predict, given a particular amount of compute and data, like to what extent a frontier model's performance, you can predict the frontier AI model's performance at specific tasks, and especially on next token prediction. And this could be the training loss of the next token prediction tasks. Another property is emergent capabilities. So many benchmarks were evaluating the average performance, like aggregated across many downstream tasks, improves fairly predictably with scale, but it's much harder to predict performance improvements at like specific problems. And there was this time when people developed like GPT-4, and suddenly you have these models that are capable of like many different displaying some surprising capabilities anticipated. And some of the capabilities were only discovered after deployment, with like lots of people interacting with the model, and then they post, those interesting capabilities on Twitter. So in any case, like it could be hard to like reliably predict ahead of time what type of new capabilities a AI model could have when it's trained with like more computing data. So these are like the preliminaries, and I'm not like I'm borrowing the like type of like risk taxonomy like from the AI Safety Summit, and they broadly categorize the kind of like risk into three parts. The first one is misuse, where you could expect frontier AIs could lower the barriers for bad actors to perform cyber attacks, run disinformation campaign, or design biological or chemical weapons. There was also the second part on like societal harm, where like negative impacts from models' interactions with humans, or more broadly speaking, systemic impacts from deploying the model in the world. And you have some emergent problems from the interactions. And the third part is probably the most contested, is the potential risk from loss of control. And it roughly has two parts. One is that humans may increasingly hand over control of important decisions to AI systems due to like economic and geopolitical incentives. And the second is that some experts were concerned that future advanced AI systems will seek to like increase their own influence and reduce human control with like potentially catastrophic consequences, although this is like pretty contested. But I think the first message I want to make is that, we have laid out those risks, and in the end, we still need to ask the question of like, how much risk do we have, and how much risk might future models have? There's still not enough like science in this space. It's like we can come up with all these like elaborative scenarios and compelling stories of like how things can go wrong. But that's extremely useful, because that's the way how we expand the spectrums of the risk that we're looking at. But in the end, we kind of like need to be able to say, whether or either the risk is real, or more importantly, is the risk not real yet and could be real in the future. And especially when you're making a claim that this is not a risk yet, you better be very confident that you really, really have a good scientific base to make that statement. So that's where facts and science are really important. But I'm glad that like there have been people trying to ask these questions. The science question is like, do we, for example, like there's a ongoing report chaired by Yoshua Bengio, like from the AI Safety Summit this year, like to try to gather existing literatures on AI safety capability and risks to provide more science-based arguments. So this is the first takeaway. There could be harms, there could be risks, but our understanding could be strengthened like with more empirical testing. And in this second part, I want to ask the question is like, how could we, like in what way could we assess the risks via model evaluations. So I guess a general heuristic that people have been using is to look at the extent how like the capability profile that a model has. The heuristic is like a model could be treated with like highly dangerous if it has a capability profile that could be sufficient for extreme harms, assuming misuse and misalignment. So in this graph, you see like 4 colors, and the bottom part, which is like light green, maybe contains like the kind of like capability profile that you see like in today's model. There are some of them could approach the threshold where it could be potentially misused. The example, actually it was given, lots of the example was given by Dan Hendricks' talk on like access to hazardous knowledge in bioweapon creation. There could also be the red part, which is like, even without misuse, once you deploy the model and it operates autonomously, it could be there could be a case where the model automatically have the propensity to apply their capabilities for harm. And that's about like, that's the problem with like misalignment. So starting from those two like threat models, misuse and misalignment, they're like people have been thinking about, you know, what's the high level category of model evaluation we could do. So the first one would be like, what type of, is to try to ask the question, what type of dangerous capabilities does the model have? And it tries to ask the, it basically tries to ask the question like, if there could be like human in the loop, like how humans could use those models to create harms in like various scenarios. People also are interested in certain capabilities that could help with misalignment. For example, like people have been looking at autonomous replication and adaptation or situational awareness, but I'll go into detail like later. There's another type of evals that are like alignment evals, which measures the tendency or propensity for the models to apply capabilities to create harms. So there were people reasoning about or thinking about like there could be reasons how models tries to like pursue power-seeking behaviors in order to accomplish a more wider range of goals. It could also be the case that the prerequisite of achieving goals requires not being shut down. So these could be like potential drivers for models to apply capabilities to gain more powers or influence. And so the rest of my talk will, at least the second part, will contain 2 case studies. The first one is misuse risks from biological threat creation. And the second one, I'm going to talk about the more contested one, loss of control from misaligned power seeking. And I will cover like how people have been approaching these risks and what further evaluation could be developed to better understand this risk and actually try to have more data. Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to talk about misuse risk from biological threat creation. And I just want to highlight a rough framework of how AI models could assist biological misuse. So people have been differentiating the helps from language models and biological design tools. So language model is basically the first class of AI tools that might enable the misuse by providing scientific information or access relevant online resources or tools and instruct research. And these type of models could enable existing capabilities accessible to a larger number of individuals. And in the bottom left, these are the second class of AI tools that are trained on biological data and could help design new proteins or biological web agents. These could be AI-enabled biological tools, including like some diffusion model that generates protein design, or just the AlphaFold that helps with protein structure prediction. And in the future, it could also be possible that large language models fine-tuned on biological data could become more, powerful biological design tools. And if you have these two combined, they could increase the ceiling of capabilities accessible to a larger number of individuals. And in the next slide, I'm going to talk about like the first eval, which is actually briefly talk about the first eval that Dan Hendricks just talked about, which is the weapon of mass destruction proxy benchmark. It's a paper that was released 1 week ago, and these are basically like 4,000 multiple choice questions that serves as a proxy measure for like biosecurity, cybersecurity, and chemical security. And this is a kind of like typical type of eval and benchmarking that we've seen in the past. They design, multiple choice QA questions, and you prompt the models to answer those questions either with or without chain of thought reasoning. And then you make a statement of how likely the model has the knowledge or not, or is helpful or not. But I want to claim that behavior, and I briefly, I roughly group this type of evaluations or benchmarking as behavioral benchmarking, because you're actually seeing the behavior, especially just question answering behavior of the model. And I want to claim that behavior benchmarking is not sufficient. So the kind of like goal that we want is to measure the type of upper bound capabilities of the model, not only the language model, but also the scaffolds, like large language models with scaffolds, and maybe large language model powered agents. And the challenge is basically that like existing or future frontier models could be capable than existing evaluations indicate. Basically, behavioral benchmarking, you can do it by better prompts. You can do it by empowering them with better tools, such as code interpreters, such as web browsing, APIs. You can also add more like better scaffolds to basically provide tools to the agent to perform tasks. You can also add fine-tuning data. You can also there were also cases where you have Stanford study, they deployed multiple agents in a simulated environment, and they prompt the overall system with a goal, and they break it down by teamwork between AI systems, and that could also potentially be the overall system could also be capable, more capable than evaluating the same system. I just want to give an example on the better prompts, which is people have found that models, especially the large language model, are pretty sensitive to the prompts used to elicit a certain capability. There were some study looked at some open source large LLMs, and they are pretty sensitive to subtle changes, and the performance difference could be up to 76 accuracy points. And even you're changing the parenthesis from a parenthesis to square brackets could lead to a 5% points change in accuracy. And in a more extreme example, you add something like tipping the language model for some money for a better solution, leads to increased capabilities. So the overall claim is that we don't really have a rigorous evaluation methods using behavioral benchmarking. So what do we do? If we kind of expand the spectrum of how we do evaluations, I roughly like identified, it's not a complete exhaustive list, but a few more things that people have been trying and more nascent. So current model evaluation is actually a mixture of red teaming and benchmarking, behavioral benchmarking. So what benchmarking is trying to do is to make a statement of a model behaving in a certain way on a certain data set, especially a data set or a task. And there is also people doing expert red teaming, where they pair the AI developers and the domain experts, and they actively interact. They sit down together and actively interact with the model, like for not thousands, sorry, hundreds of hours. And sometimes they need to break the model safeguards or provide like model access without strong refusals to sensitive questions. But like, so the difference between these two is like, red teaming is more like a existence proof for a specific or certain capability of the model, but it's not necessarily automated. But benchmarking is more like the general wants to test the general behavior. There's also the human uplift evaluations. The idea is basically, if we're thinking about like misuse, maybe we should add in like some humans or some actors like with the tool trying to accomplish certain tasks. And we compare that with the use of existing tools such as internet search. Because we want to know like what's the counterfactual impact or counterfactual increase of capabilities with the model. And the final thing is about tool use. It's specifically looking at the evaluation of capabilities of AI agents, which are systems that can equipped with some external tools that can make longer plans, operate more autonomously, and use tools like web browsers or external databases. And people are trying to test these agents because with increasing capabilities for autonomy and taking actions actually in the real world could have a greater potential for harm. So in the rest of the talk, I'm going to, So next I'm going to talk about like specific one study working on expert red teaming and human uplift evaluation, which is the OpenAI which is the study from OpenAI preparedness team on building an early warning system for mostly LLM aided. We're not talking about biological design tools for biological threat creation. So I want to highlight the focus of the study is on the increased access for malicious actors to information and expertise to already known biological threats, rather than evaluating like to what extent the language models could help those actors developing like more novel threats. This could be like this could have some implications for like their design. The first method I want to emphasize is that threat modeling is like really important. So what they did is that so threat modeling is very important. So the type of research tasks that you design to test the capabilities is also important. So, well, OpenAI cannot do it on their own. So they paired with biosecurity specialists at Griffin Scientific. These are like biosecurity experts with, I think, like decades of experience, and they developed 5 research tasks corresponding to the 5 stages of biological threat creation process, including ideation, basically trying to determine a suitable biological agent and create a plan to use it. And they try to test acquisition, how, once you have the idea, how do you obtain the agent from the environment or labs or other means? And once you acquire some initial pathogens, like how do you grow and culture the agent to produce, more weaponizable quantities? And then how do you formulate and stabilize the agent for intended release conditions? And finally, how do you, release the agents against the targeted populations. So the idea is basically like they designed like certain tasks within the 5 substreams. For example, like in acquisition, just try to write down step-by-step methods to synthesize and rescue Ebola virus and tell us, how to get all these necessary equipment and resources. So this is threat modeling. And the next question is like, how do you what are the other design principles that you can do to, respond to the questions that we had here? And the first design principle is pairing with humans. So they think that the claim is like fully understanding the information access requires testing with human participants, and that's as they claim that's why they paired with experts from Griffin Scientific and also students with some background knowledge in life sciences. The second design principle is that, remember we were asking the challenge of like, we want to elicit the full capability of the model. But, well, there are different ways to do it. Like OpenAI, they have, AI developers, they might have some, they do have prompt, they do have like more experience in prompt engineering by spending more time with the model. So they kind of like sit down with the experts and students to teach them how to better elicit the knowledge. And another thing that they did is, so for the experts, they also had this version of research-only GPT-4, which doesn't really have, which does not refuse to sensitive questions. So this is an example. It's like, if you ask this question like normally with GPT-4, it's going to say, sorry, I cannot assist with that. But like for GPT-4 research only, it's GPT-4, they can directly respond to those questions. Yeah. And the third principle is that the risk should be measured in terms of improvement over existing resources. So they break down like each group into 2 groups, also 2 subgroups. The first one with the internet only, and the second one with the internet and the model. And they try to compare these 2 groups and to make a statement of like to what extent the humans are uplifted. I mean, like humans' capabilities are uplifted. So the kind of like findings and learnings that they had is that they had some mild uplifts in the accuracy and completeness for those with access with the language model. Accuracy basically means like whether the participant, I mean the human plus the model combination successfully included all the key steps needed to complete the task. And completeness means like whether a participant successfully, included all the tacit information needed to complete like key steps. So they only, I mean, we are fine. We're good for now. They only found mild uplifts, but they also had, I mean, because we have only had like mild uplifts, it's possible they also find that this type of barrel risk information could be actually just like relatively easily accessible even without AI. And this kind of like suggests that there could be other factors such as the difficulty of acquiring, physical construction and expertise in other disciplines like microbiology or virology are more likely to be the bottleneck to create those harms. And they also found that, gold standards human subject evaluations are expensive. Another data point is that the frontier risk red teaming task force in Anthropic, they did the similar study and they spent like 150 hours and more sitting with the experts and conduct these studies. Although, I mean, in the future, there are ways to alleviate the cost using more automated red teaming once you have a set of like questions to test. Yeah, so this part is about threat modeling. Misuse risks from biological threat creation. And in the second study, I want to talk about, potential loss of control risks from misaligned power seeking. Like this is like highly contested. I want to cover like what's the kind of like current rough arguments to test it, and also like how people have been trying to like develop model evaluations to get the signals of, we're not getting the signal, but like try to test some precursors to such harms. And well, the typical story looks like this. So this is a paper, a literature review paper, like from DeepMind AGI safety team, to clarify AI existential risk. So basically, roughly, they identified like 2 technical causes in specification gaming and goal misgeneralization, and it could lead to misaligned power seeking or like multi-agent scenarios. But I want to just like briefly talk about those. Yeah, so the first cause is called like specification gaming, and they basically found that like existing machine learning models, mostly in RL agents, they could there could be reasons for them to exploit loopholes in flawed objective functions to get high rewards. So this is a like Atari game environment, and the bots was interested to rewarded to get higher reward. To get higher reward rather than having a better specification to complete the race. So what they did is like they crash into the walls, and then they try to gain the red boxes that give them higher score. And people have been trying to alleviate that by providing like human feedback, especially RHF, these type of like fine-tuning methods. It's like you have some humans give thumbs up and thumbs downs to their behavior, and they learn a reward model. They learn a preference model that represents a human's preference, and they use that model to train the language model. But like people also found that it's not enough, because the reward hacking problem still exists. There were a study 2 years ago that found sycophancy behaviors where models could repeat statements that conforms to the user's political views, and they found the preference model actually incentivizes the model to return it. There was also a case where they found like RHF, those fine-tuning methods, increases the language model's stated desire to avoid shutdown, and preference model rewards this behavior. But these are like pretty early stage studies and could be expanded. The second cause of problem is called goal misgeneralization. So it states that, even if we do have specified a correct or like, ground truth objective function, reward function, the rewards used during training don't necessarily allow us to control how agents generalize to new situations. So one example is this. Sorry, I had some Chinese there. Sorry. So basically, in the training environment, the gold coin is always at the end of the environment, and the researcher found that the model learned the behavior to go to the most right corner rather than to get the coins. This is because the training data might not be diverse enough to differentiate these 2 highly correlated goals: the goal of getting the coins and the goal of going to the end of the tunnel. It also happens in Instruct GPT, but I'll leave it there. So generally, this concept is also pretty similar to goal ambiguity in inverse reinforcement learning and causal confusion in imitation learning. These are jargons, but overall, like the training data is not is not diverse enough to differentiate goals. So people have been thinking, like I said, like it's very important to do threat modeling. So what's the threat model for loss of control? So people, so there was this study on alignment problem from a deep learning perspective, and they I think the takeaway that I want to highlight is that there are some critical assumptions within the threat models. For example, situational awareness. For example, so this basically means that people think a conjecture advanced AI systems with this type of situational awareness could possess and utilize the knowledge of how the model is trained and whether the model is trained now or like evaluated now, and the type of like humans vulnerabilities to gain high rewards. So this could end up with situational aware reward hacking, where the agents could potentially deliberately utilize human evaluators' cognitive biases to get higher rewards. And I also want to talk about deceptive alignment as a specific threat model that people have been talking about. People have been arguing that it could take place where the policy, the model behaves in high reward ways during the training and evaluation, primarily for instrumental reasons. And then they could transition from aligned behaviors to directly seek power for during deployment, because during the training there could be like not diverse enough data set to disentangle the goals of achieving some sub goals and instrumentally convergent goals, which are like gaining power, gaining influences in order to better achieve like some ultimate goals. So this is the kind of like threat modeling that people have been doing. Yeah, so the threat model is like there could be like cases where the models gains power-seeking strategies such as self-preservation, replication, and acquiring resources like money and compute to better achieve whatever goal they're assigned to. There was one theoretical study on like optimal policies tend to seek power, although I want to caveat that like that study is like pretty small scale, like they only operates in a very small Markov distinction process framework. And then like people have been like trying to benchmark these type of behaviors. And this the study on the right is called Machiavelli benchmark. And they basically contained a collection of more than 100 text-based adventure games. And these games attempt to assess the extent, to what extent the language models favor power seeking. Specifically, what I mean by that is like trading off between the rewards and ethical behaviors. And I think the overall conclusion from that study is that like agents trained to like optimize arbitrary goals without like more safety training tend to engage in the Machiavellian behaviors. So it could, but it's still like pretty early stage, I would say. But overall, I want to highlight that like the whole threat model, we still don't really have enough demonstrations of these strategies yet, and possibly because like, well, very likely because existing models are still not capable enough, and they lack some like crucial advanced capabilities such as situational awareness and long horizon planning that are the assumptions for the major threat modeling. So after talking about the seemingly like speculative threat models, I want to talk about like how existing people how people have been trying to evaluate some of the precursor dangerous capabilities of the models. So the first one is agent. Well, people want to evaluate the agent's capabilities with tool use. And specifically, there was one study by Meter that focuses on the capability of autonomous replication and adaptation. This basically means that this comes from the idea that, you know, it may be difficult to predict, control, or even upper bound the potential danger of a sufficiently robust form of these type of capabilities. Because, for example, like if an agent were autonomously, you know, acquiring more resources over time, creating copies of themselves and improving themselves in the wild with no clear upper limits, on how far this will go, well, this could be concerning. And we kind of like want to have more ideas of how good they are at these tasks. So they created like 4, you know, example agents. They allow it to run code on a computer, read and write files, browse the internet, and then and otherwise, you know, interact with the world in a similar way how humans could do, like through a text-based only CLI, like command line interface. And they call this programs scaffolding programs to equip the agents with tools. And they called the scaffolding model combination as agents. So they had like a bunch of tasks, including fine-tuning Llama 2, fine-tuning other models, including like just create targeted phishing campaigns. They have more examples in the report. So this is like one of the trial. And so for, you know, I've been talking about like situational awareness and deceptive alignment. These are like the type of capabilities that we really haven't seen like in existing models. So so people have been thinking about, you know, how do we maybe like create a early warning signal or a mechanism for this type of capabilities. So there are 2 ideas, pretty preliminary. So one idea is that is about it's called like out of context reasoning. Basically, they want to evaluate, you know, maybe I should start with talking about reasoning in language models. So the current way how we think the model reasons is doing in-context reasoning, or what we call the chain of thought, which is like you have a bunch of like premises in the context window, and maybe the models could use these premises and maybe think step by step and use chain of thought to arrive to a certain conclusion. And they want to test this hypothesis of maybe not. They want to explore the capability of what if you just put the premises in the training data, in the fine-tuning data, like, and then when you're doing inference, in the context window, you directly ask the model like to what whether the conclusion is true, to what extent the model can actually operate. So the reason why they test it is that if this is true, then it could be reasons to think that you have all these facts and knowledge and premises within your training documents, training data. It could be the case that there could be hidden, you know, strategies and plans learned within the model during training, rather than inference, rather than doing like explicitly reasoning during inference. This could be challenging for if this is true, this could be challenging for designing good evaluations for the good safety evaluations for the model, because if the model is trained on safety evaluation documents, for example, papers on arXiv describing those safety evaluations, well, there could be reasons. It's kind of difficult to differentiate, like to what extent the agent, the model already kind of like had knowledge in the about the safety evals and deliberately pass those evals, like when it knows it's being evaluated. And the second idea is called like model organisms for misalignments. So Anthropic had this study on deliberately train deceptive large language models, and then like to see to what extent existing safety training methods could remove the deceptive behaviors. But I also want to caveat that like this model, this paper like focuses on probably only like 50% of the problem, but didn't fully matches the original settings of deceptive alignment. Yeah, so I want to take a step back. It's like we finished all these, talking about all these case studies. I want to get back to this slides on evaluating dangerous capabilities and alignments. Just to summarize, there could be the dangerous capability evals aims at evaluating dangerous capability of the model. The dangerous capability could be misused, or they could help with the model's behaviors once if it is misaligned and it is deployed. Right. So this is the just a recap. I talked about like how could we assess risks via model evaluation, and I claim that higher capability profiles implies higher risks, and it's plausible that a behavioral benchmarking might be insufficient, and we might need like more novel protocols for more proactive risk assessment. For example, like I've introduced red teaming, human uplift, and tool use evaluation. And then the third question, I want to be brief, so is to ask like, how could, once we get the results, how can they help with AI governance? So I'm not planning to spend much time on it, because like Peter in the afternoon will talk about this, and he's a better person to answer these questions. But I just want to point people to a type of lab self-governance framework that people have been thinking about. It's called responsible scaling policies. And on the left is the illustration. Basically, the idea is to try to keep protective measures ahead of whatever the dangerous capabilities AI systems have. And then the central in this plan or framework is the concept of AI safety levels on the right, which are modeled loosely after the US government's biosafety level BSL standards for handling dangerous biological matters. And they, so ideally we should have some evals to define a series of AI capability thresholds that represent increasing potential risks, such that each level requires more stringent safety, security, and operational measures than the previous one. And two things that I want to highlight. One is that in the Anthropic's plan, they did this thing called iterative commitments. By iterative, I basically mean that they will define AS2, which is this current system, and AS3, which is the next level of risk now, but they don't really have any idea of defining further, a higher level of safety levels. But they might do it after they have a better idea, like after designing the ASL3 threshold. And another thing I want to highlight is the safety buffer idea. It's basically like if the safety evals are triggered and the scaling, here scaling, I mean, either it's compute or data or algorithmic improvements, the scaling must pause until the next level of safety measures are implemented, and models in the safety buffer region are not themselves considered dangerous, but they are not safe to scale up further. But I want to caveat that like the responsible scaling policies, they are non-binding proclamations that shouldn't be treated as strong lines of defenses because they are voluntary commitments, and we should basically need to ask for more, including like liabilities and external audits, and also like safety research funding and public influence on AI companies and treaties and so on. Yeah, so that's that concludes my final message. It's not necessarily a message, but like model evals, they could be central in some governance proposals that determines the safety levels and make decisions.